All right, ready to jump back in time?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so get this. We're heading back to the early 1500s.
Wow.
Back when, like, most of the world map was still totally a mystery.
Right.
But today's deep dive isn't about, like, dragons on the edge of the map.
Huh.
It's about the guy who, like, totally changed the map entirely. Vasco Núñez de Balboa.
Oh, yeah.
You might not know his name yet,
Mm-hmm.
but you're about to find out why his journey is one for the history books.
Yeah, Balboa's story is amazing.
It really is.
It's amazing to think about what it must have been like back then, right? Setting sail with so much unknown territory.
Totally.
And Balboa, he didn't just discover a new island or a coastline.
Right.
This guy stumbled upon the Pacific Ocean.
I know, right?
The Pacific Ocean.
That's huge. But before we get to, like, the aha moment,
Yeah.
let's back up.
Okay.
Who was this Balboa guy? I always picture explorers coming from, like, bustling port cities surrounded by ships and maps from childhood.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Funny you should say that because Balboa's hometown, Jerez de los Caballeros, was far from a bustling port.
Oh, really?
Yeah, picture this. A town in Spain steeped in medieval history, churches, fortresses, and even today.
Yeah.
It only has about 10,000 people.
Really?
It wasn't exactly a global hub, and yet it produced a surprising number of explorers and conquistadors during this era.
So what was it about this small town that, like, seemed to breed adventurers?
Well, this region, Extremadura, was heavily influenced by powerful military orders,
Okay.
most notably the Order of Santiago.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine these orders as elite warrior monks deeply involved in the Reconquista,
Okay.
the centuries-long struggle to reclaim the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule.
Gotcha.
They weren't just fighting battles, they were spreading a particular ideology,
Interesting.
a blend of religious fervor and military ambition. You could say Balboa grew up surrounded by stories of conquest and the glory of expanding Christendom.
Okay, so maybe that explains the adventurous spirit. But how did he end up in Panama? Did he just, like, point his ship west and hope for the best?
Haha, not quite. Balboa actually started out as part of an expedition led by Martin Fernandez de Enciso.
Okay.
They were headed for the New World, specifically to a fledgling colony at San Sebastian de Urabá,
Right.
which, by the way, was a total disaster.
Oh, what happened?
Think disease, starvation, constant attacks.
Oh, no.
Not exactly the paradise they'd envisioned.
I can only imagine. So
Yeah.
what did Balboa do in this mess?
This is where we see those leadership qualities that would later make him famous.
Okay.
He rallies the colonists, convinces them to abandon the doomed San Sebastian,
Yeah.
and relocate to Darién. Think denser jungle, less European presence.
Oh, wow.
It was a bold move, but it proved to be brilliant.
And that's where they founded Santa Maria la Antigua del Darién, right?
Exact.
The first permanent European settlement on mainland America. That's a pretty big deal.
It is.
Yeah.
And it speaks to Balboa's strategic thinking.
Right.
Darién offered better access to trade routes and resources.
Right.
It was a chance for the colony to finally thrive. You can see how this early success in such a challenging environment might have fueled his ambition for even greater discoveries.
Okay, so we've got Balboa,
Yeah?
the small town guy turned leader in this new settlement.
Mm-hmm.
Is this where the rumors of a South Sea start swirling around?
Exactly. Imagine being in Balboa's shoes. You're in a completely new world,
Right.
surrounded by dense jungle,
Yeah.
and you start hearing whispers from the indigenous people about a vast sea to the south.
Okay.
A sea filled with riches beyond imagination.
Wow.
Of course, we have to remember that these were times driven by gold and glory,
Yeah, for sure.
but there was also a genuine thirst for knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
for pushing the boundaries of the known world.
So he wasn't just after gold. There was a real explorer's spirit in him.
Definitely. But let's be real, those rumors of gold probably didn't hurt his motivation.
All right.
And it's not like this was a casual stroll to the beach. Balboa's expedition to find the South Sea was brutal.
Oh, wow.
190 men hacking through thick, jungle-facing hostile tribes, battling the elements. I mean, they even had those ferocious Spanish war dogs with them.
Hold on. War dogs.
Yeah.
That seems a bit extreme for, like, a geography field trip.
Well, remember, this was a time of conquest.
True.
But what's interesting is that Balboa wasn't just relying on brute force. He understood the importance of alliances. He made crucial connections with indigenous leaders like Carreta and Comagre,
Right.
using diplomacy alongside force.
So he was playing the game on multiple levels.
Yeah.
both military and diplomatic. That takes some serious skill.
It does. And let's not forget the sheer physical and mental toughness needed for this trek.
Right.
They were dealing with disease, skirmishes, the constant threat of ambush.
Wow.
Many of those 190 men never made it back.
Okay, I'm getting a real sense of like the danger and determination involved here.
Yeah.
So after all that, does Balboa finally reach this mysterious sea?
He does, picture this, September 25th, 1513.
Okay.
Balboa, exhausted, probably covered in sweat and who knows what else from the jungle,
Well,
reaches a mountain peak, and there it is, the vast, shimmering expanse of the Pacific Ocean.
wow.
He becomes the first European to lay eyes on this South Sea.
I bet he was ecstatic.
Oh, yeah.
Like that must have felt like winning the lottery.
Right.
But with, oceans instead of cash.
Exactly.
Wow.
It was a monumental moment.
Yeah.
He plants the Spanish flag, claiming this new ocean and all its potential riches for the crown.
Talk about a view.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Balboa's triumph was short-lived.
Oh,
Back in the world of politics, rivals were emerging.
Okay.
Most notably, Pedro Arias Davila, also known as Pedro, who arrived in Darién as the new governor.
Oh, that doesn't sound good. Is this where things start to go south for Balboa?
Unfortunately, yes, Balboa, despite his incredible discovery, found himself caught in the web of colonial power struggles. Accused of treason by Pedro Arias, he was executed in 1519.
Wow.
A tragic end for a visionary explorer.
That's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in moments of triumph,
Yeah.
the game of power can change everything.
For sure.
But even with his life cut short, Balboa's legacy lived on, right?
Absolutely. His discovery paved the way for later expeditions to Asia.
Oh.
The development of trans-Pacific trade routes. The ripples of his journey are still felt today.
Wow.
Think about it. Without Balboa stumbling upon the Pacific, Panama, as we know it, might not even exist.
That's a great point. So let's talk about Panama.
Okay.
How did this one man's journey through the jungle transform an entire country? We've got to unpack that next.
It's fascinating how Balboa's discovery turned Panama from like a dense, unexplored jungle into a global crossroads.
Right.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
This was a place where Europeans had barely set foot.
Right.
And suddenly it's on the map as like a key link between oceans.
It's like Balboa opened a door to a whole new world, right? But I'm curious, what was Panama like before Balboa arrived? Were there already established societies and cultures thriving in this, like, unexplored jungle?
Oh, absolutely. Long before any European ships appeared on the horizon, Panama was home to a vibrant mix of indigenous cultures.
Oh, wow.
You had groups like the Cueva, the Guaymi, the Cunas, each with their own distinct languages, customs, traditions, and ways of life that had evolved over centuries.
So it wasn't just like an empty wilderness waiting to be discovered.
Right.
There were already complex societies in place.
Exactly. And those societies had their own sophisticated systems of agriculture, trade, governance, and spirituality.
Wow.
They had a deep understanding of the rainforest's resources and lived in harmony with their environment.
Right.
It's important to remember that the story of Panama isn't just about European exploration. It's about the intersection of different worlds and the impact they had on each other.
Okay, so we have these diverse indigenous cultures.
Yeah.
And then Balboa shows up, planting the Spanish flag and claiming the Pacific for the crown. That must have been a pretty jarring experience for the people who had called Panama home for generations.
Yeah, you can imagine the shock, the confusion, the fear.
Right.
For many indigenous groups, the arrival of the Spanish marked a turning point.
Okay.
The beginning of a long and often tragic period of colonization.
Right.
We can't shy away from the darker side of this history. The disease, the forced labor, the suppression of indigenous cultures.
Yeah.
It's all part of the complex tapestry of Panama's past.
It's a reminder that exploration and discovery often came at a heavy price for the indigenous people who were already there.
Yeah, for sure.
But how did they respond to this sudden influx of outsiders? Was it all resistance and conflict?
Well, it was certainly a time of upheaval and change.
Right.
Some groups resisted fiercely, defending their territories and way of life.
Okay.
Others tried to adapt, negotiating with the Spanish and seeking ways to preserve their traditions within this new reality.
Right.
And sadly, some were decimated by disease or forced into servitude.
It must have been a time of incredible resilience and adaptation for those indigenous communities.
Definitely.
But as the Spanish established their presence, Panama started to transform, right here, from a jungle outpost to like a strategic hub in the Spanish Empire.
Exactly. Balboa's discovery had put Panama on the map, literally.
Right.
The Spanish recognized its strategic importance, its potential as a gateway between oceans.
Okay.
And so began the process of transforming Panama into a colonial outpost,
Gotcha.
a key link in their transatlantic trade network.
So we're talking about like the early stages of what would eventually become the Panama Canal.
Well, not quite the canal as we know it today,
Okay.
but the seeds were definitely planted.
Mm-hmm.
The Spanish established settlements,
Right.
built roads,
Okay.
and started to exploit Panama's resources.
Right.
And one of the most significant developments was the founding of Panama City in 1519 by Pedrarius,
Oh, wow.
the same governor who had orchestrated Balboa's execution.
Wow. Talk about irony. The man who condemned Balboa for his ambition ended up building a city on the foundation of his discovery.
It's a twist of history, isn't it?
It is.
And Panama City quickly became a vital port,
Mm-hmm.
a hub for the shipment of gold and silver extracted from South America back to Spain.
Wow.
Imagine those treasure-laden galleons sailing into Panama City,
Yeah.
their holds brimming with riches from the Inca Empire.
Wow.
It was a time of both immense wealth and brutal exploitation.
So Panama was essentially like a bridge between the Atlantic and Pacific,
Right.
facilitating the flow of riches back to Europe.
Exactly.
And as this trade route flourished,
Yeah.
Panama's population must have become quite diverse.
Absolutely. Think about all the people who would have converged on Panama during this era.
Yeah.
Spanish colonists, African slaves,
Right.
indigenous laborers,
Mm.
merchants from all corners of the Spanish Empire.
Wow.
It was a melting pot of cultures,
Yeah.
a clash and blend of traditions, languages, and beliefs.
Right.
And this mixing of cultures is still evident in Panama today.
Okay, so we've talked about the indigenous roots,
Yeah.
the Spanish colonial influence, and the influx of people from across the empire.
Right.
That's a lot of layers. How did those different cultural strands weave together
Yeah.
to create what we now recognize as Panamanian culture?
That's where things get really interesting. Imagine a tapestry woven with threads of indigenous traditions,
Okay.
Spanish customs, African rhythms,
Right.
and a sprinkle of influences from other parts of the world.
Wow.
It's a vibrant blend that's unique to Panama.
Okay.
You see it in the music,
Mm-hmm.
the infectious rhythms of cumbia,
Oh, yeah.
the soulful strains of tamborito,
Okay.
and the echoes of Spanish folk melodies.
Interesting.
You taste it in the food,
Yeah.
the hearty stews like sancocho,
Okay.
the fresh seafood ceviches, the spicy flavors influenced by African and Caribbean traditions.
Right.
And you feel it in the warmth and hospitality of the Panamanian people.
Yeah.
Their openness to different cultures, their love of celebration and community.
You're making me want to book a flight to Panama right now. It sounds like a cultural feast for the senses.
It really is.
But amidst all this blending and mixing,
Yeah,
did the indigenous cultures manage to retain their distinct identities?
they did. And it's a testament to their strength and resilience.
Right.
While some traditions were lost or assimilated, many indigenous groups have actively worked to preserve their languages, customs, and beliefs.
Okay.
You'll find vibrant indigenous communities throughout Panama today,
Yeah.
particularly in the Darién region and on the San Blas Islands,
Okay.
where the Guna people have fiercely protected their autonomy and cultural heritage.
Wow.
They're known for their intricate mola textiles.
Oh, yeah?
Colorful layered fabric art that often depicts elements of nature, mythology, and daily life.
I've seen pictures of molas, and they're absolutely stunning. It's amazing how art can be like a powerful tool for cultural expression and resistance.
It is. And for the Guna people, molas are more than just beautiful objects.
Right.
They're a way to tell their stories, to
Mhm.
connect with their ancestors,
Yeah.
and to assert their cultural identity in a world that's constantly trying to homogenize everything.
So even within this melting pot of cultures, there's a strong sense of preserving unique identities and traditions.
Yeah.
That's a powerful message.
It is. And I think it speaks to the richness and complexity of Panama's cultural landscape.
Right.
It's not just about blending. It's
Yeah.
about finding ways to coexist,
Yeah.
to celebrate differences.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge the contributions of all the groups that have shaped this nation.
It sounds like a delicate balance, embracing the influences of the wider world while also holding on to those unique cultural threads.
It is.
But that balance seems to be at the heart of what makes Panama so special.
It is, and I think that balance is reflected in how Panama views itself on the world stage today. It's a nation that recognizes its strategic importance,
Right.
its role as a global connector,
Yeah.
but it's also fiercely proud of its heritage,
Right.
its cultural diversity, and its natural beauty.
Okay, so let's talk about that global stage.
Okay.
We've seen how Panama went from an undiscovered land to a strategic hub during the Spanish colonial era. But what about Panama's role in the world today? How has that legacy shaped its identity and its place in the 21st century?
Well, Panama today is a fascinating blend of the old and the new.
Okay.
It's a nation that's embracing globalization, capitalizing on its unique location and its expertise in logistics and trade,
Right.
while also striving to preserve its cultural heritage and protect its natural wonders.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balancing act, but Panama is navigating it with a sense of purpose and optimism.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Let's dive into that balancing act and explore how Panama is shaping its future while honoring its past. All right, so we've established that Panama is this incredible blend of cultures and history,
Yeah,
sitting right at like a global crossroads.
right.
It's easy to see why it's often called the bridge of the world, not just geographically, but culturally too.
For sure.
But what does that actually mean for Panama today? What's it like to live in a country that's like constantly connecting different parts of the world?
Well, imagine being at like a bustling intersection with ideas, goods, and people flowing from all directions. That's kind of what it feels like in Panama.
Ah,
On one hand, you have this incredible sense of opportunity, access to global markets, exposure to diverse cultures,
right.
and like a dynamic energy that comes from being at the center of things.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there are also challenges that come with being a bridge.
Okay.
Managing the flow, ensuring that everyone benefits, and protecting your own identity in the midst of all that movement.
It sounds like a constant balancing act.
It is.
Trying to harness the power of being a global connector without losing sight of what makes Panama unique.
Exactly. And one of the biggest challenges Panama faces today is ensuring that all of its citizens benefit from this global connection.
Okay.
Despite its overall economic growth, there are still disparities in wealth distribution,
Right.
particularly between urban and rural areas and within indigenous communities. Bridging that gap and creating a more equitable society is like a top priority for Panama.
So it's not just about building bigger bridges and expanding trade routes.
Right.
It's about making sure that those connections translate into real opportunities for all Panamanians.
Precisely. And that means investing in education,
Okay.
healthcare, and social programs, particularly in rural and indigenous communities.
Right.
It means creating jobs that pay a living wage and ensuring that everyone has access to basic services like clean water and electricity. It's about building a more inclusive society where everyone has the chance to thrive regardless of their background or where they come from.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's be honest.
Yeah.
Development often comes at a cost.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the environment.
Right.
How is Panama balancing its economic ambitions with the need to protect its incredible biodiversity?
That's a critical question, and it's one that Panama is grappling with very seriously. You're right, development can put a strain on natural resources, deforestation,
Yeah.
pollution, habitat loss.
Right.
These are all real concerns. But what's encouraging is that Panama is taking a proactive approach,
Okay.
recognizing that protecting the environment is not just a moral imperative, but also an economic one.
Okay. So how are they putting that into action? What are some of the specific steps they're taking?
Well, for one, Panama is investing heavily in renewable energy sources.
Okay.
Think solar, wind, hydroelectric.
Right.
They're aiming to reduce their reliance on fossil fuels and become a leader in sustainable energy production. And they're promoting ecotourism, encouraging visitors to experience Panama's natural wonders in a way that's responsible and beneficial to local communities.
So it's about shifting the focus from mass tourism to something more sustainable and culturally sensitive.
Exactly. It's about showcasing Panama's natural beauty while also preserving it for future generations.
Right.
And they're also strengthening their protected areas, national parks,
Right.
reserves, wildlife sanctuaries to safeguard their biodiversity and create corridors for wildlife to thrive.
It sounds like they're really trying to find that sweet spot,
Yeah,
harnessing the power of their natural resources without depleting them.
right.
It's not an easy task, but it seems like they're committed to finding that balance.
They are. And it's not just about government policies.
Right.
It's about like a growing awareness among the Panamanian people themselves.
Yeah.
There's a sense of pride in their natural heritage.
Okay.
A recognition that protecting their forests, oceans, and wildlife is essential for their own well-being and for the future of their country.
So there's hope that Panama can become like a model for sustainable development, showing the world how to balance economic growth with environmental responsibility.
There's definitely potential for that. And I think what makes Panama so interesting is that it's not just about the what,
Right.
the policies, the projects.
Right.
It's also about the how.
Oh, okay.
There's a spirit of innovation and collaboration here, a willingness to experiment and find solutions that work for everyone.
I like that. It's not just about copying what others have done.
Right.
It's about forging their own path,
Exactly.
taking the best from different worlds and adapting it to their own unique circumstances.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Panama,
Yeah.
I think that's a powerful message to take away.
What's that?
Panama's story from Balboa's journey to the present day is a reminder that history is not just about the past. It's about shaping the future. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness,
Right.
celebrating our differences, and finding innovative ways to create a world where everyone has the chance to thrive.
Beautifully said. It's a reminder that even in a world that often feels divided,
Yeah.
there are places like Panama where bridges are being built, not just across oceans, but across cultures,
Right.
across generations, and towards a more sustainable and hopeful future.
And that's a journey worth being a part of, don't you think?
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there,
Yeah.
keep exploring, keep learning,
Keep learning.
and keep building those bridges wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Panama.